Hey everyone, so I'm going to talk to you today about why I feel like so much of the traditional video games media out there from IGN, Kotaku, Polygon, GameSpot, and so many other websites are ultimately worried about YouTubers. And I feel like I could talk about this, and it's something I've briefly touched on in the past, mostly through live streams, because, well, I used to be someone who worked at a traditional website. I was editor-in-chief of ZeldaInformer.com, taking that from a site that was hardly getting any views to being a site that got multiple millions of views per month. I was editor-in-chief of Gamnesia.com. I also founded VetroidWiki.org at one point, and I've obviously spent a large chunk of my life from age 12 all the way through, I don't know, almost 30 years old, working on traditional print media websites. And yes, at the time I had my goals of, hey, you know what, maybe IGN, maybe GameSpot, maybe one of these major websites will take notice of me at some point and offer me a position. And I've actually, it's interesting because I've been in contact with people from, IGN and others in the past. It is a conversation that has occurred. And while I never got hired or had a firm offer on the table to be hired, it clearly was a path that could have led to such things. And I think there are people here on YouTube as aspiring YouTubers that, well, hope to do the same thing. Obviously, this is not a good example or a good look for YouTubers, but Philip, you guys know him, the Philip Mewson of the Dead Cells and other plagiarism controversies, was a YouTuber who got offered a position by IGN and took it. And I still think there's other YouTubers out there that hope to do this kind of thing full-time and have that full-time paycheck, even if it's not the greatest pay in the world, because let's just be honest, video game journalism is not exactly a thank-filled job full of lots of people loving you and lots of money most of the time. Now, the reason that I want to talk about this today of all days is probably because you've heard of a couple YouTubers that I respect, one that I'm acquainted with, another that I'll probably talk to and chat with him and who knows, maybe meet one day. And that is Dreamcast Guy and RGT85. Now, Dreamcast Guy kind of started some of this conversation a bit because he was banned recently, or blocked, I should say, recently on Twitter by Kotaku's Jason Schreier. And RGT85 decided to weigh in on this, and as did Dreamcast Guy, who openly invited Jason to come talk to him in a video and kind of make a thing out of this. And obviously we know about Young Yeah in the past month, back in November, he obviously had a big, long conversation with Jason Schreier as well, over an hour long. Went over a lot of things. Some people liked what Jason said, some people didn't like it, some people liked Young Yeah, some didn't. And then they still went at it again on Twitter with, Jason Schreier kind of attacking him over his comment section and making it feel like this is your audience because he picked out like choice comments of the worst of the bunch, ignoring the thousands of other comments that were nothing like that. And I honestly think that, well, I can't, take IGN, GameSpot, everything, and just deduce them down to, hey, Jason Schreier from Kotaku represents all of them. I do think he represents a mentality that exists that might not always come out, because like when I've been at events like E3 and you bump into someone from IGN, you bump into someone from these places, they're very, very friendly. Even they find out you're a YouTuber, they're still really friendly. They ask about the kind of content you make and what you enjoy about doing it and how you do it differently maybe than other content creators or even IGN themselves and stuff. And they seem to be mostly friendly. I mean, we're all people, we're all human beings. But I think that IGN and the rest feel threatened by YouTubers. And I feel like they feel threatened because when you work at this big corporate entity, right, you're always answering to someone. I was editor-in-chief, but I still had an owner above me at a lot of these entities. MetroidWiki.org aside, where I was the owner of that. So when you're always answering to people, not everything necessarily always goes the way you want it to. And plus you have these large staffs underneath you, both maybe paid and or volunteer. In my case, almost all of the staff members through Zelda Informer, Gamnesia, and Metroid Wiki were volunteer staff. You feel even more pressure to not shut down them because these people are giving you their passion, they're giving you this work for free, and you don't want to, shut down their ideas because without them, you can't do that venture on your own entirely. So it's a very thankful and thankless position to be in, and something as YouTubers we don't have to worry about. Like when you're at IGN, a lot of people working on the wiki are completely volunteer workers. They're just fans. They're just gamers going out there and putting in this effort, getting nothing in return, but making hopefully other gamers happy. And yeah, sometimes that leads to jobs at IGN and stuff, just like what I was doing could lead to jobs like that. But that's usually not the end goal. People just enjoy doing it. And when you're at these big companies and you're doing this stuff, a lot of it is under this corporate guise of we have advertisers to please, we have this to please, we have that to please. And it's not always all about the money. And I don't want to accuse these places of being just about the money, but it seems to be corporate. And I think that's where the disconnect between these websites and YouTubers come, because YouTubers in general are not exactly corporate. Sure, we might get a sponsorship here or there from an accessory maker or whatever. Or what I had one sponsorship, I think my most recent one was for a VPN service that literally none of you signed up for, and thus I made zero money from, and it was basically just a big waste of my time. Why? Because VPN has nothing, I don't want to say it has nothing to do with my audience, but I don't know that I'm necessarily the greatest target for an ad like that. It was an experiment, didn't go well. I don't really know if that makes me corporate. Nintendo doesn't send me review copies of games, even though, hey, Nintendo, invite me into your ambassadors program. I'd love to review games. I get review copies of games from indie studios all the time, like any YouTuber, but I don't think any of that makes you corporate, because I'm not answering to anyone. This channel, everything that happens on this channel, anything Eric does, anything that I invite a guest on to do, anything that 5J does on the weekends when he does live streams on the channel, it all falls down to me. Everything that happens, as an example, I trust 5J on weekends to not have anything controversial happen. If he says something controversial, he does something controversial, he creates a controversy, I'm the one ultimately impacted by it, because this is my channel. And I think that's the great thing, and obviously the fear when I invite others like 5J on. So I gotta be so careful about the people that I bring on this channel. Like, we have a $20 podcast tier on patreon.com/Nintendo Prime. And that $20 tier that literally anyone could pay to come on our podcast, I don't know these people beforehand. So when they come on the podcast, I have to worry that they might say something or do something inappropriate that comes back and negatively impacts on me. Now, granted, the full edited version, I can edit certain things out and make it better, but part of the podcast is broadcasted live to our patrons. And I can't take that stuff back when it's said by other people. Granted, it might not paint me in that terrible light, but that I would have such a guest on could paint me in a negative light. But again, this all comes back onto me. And I think that's the difference between YouTube and IGN. Like, this stuff happens on, someone does something controversial at IGN, it falls onto the whole of the company, making every person that works there look bad, even if that's not fair. Whereas here, something bad happens, it just falls on me. And ultimately, I'm in control of 100% of the content that happens on this channel. Now, the thing is I don't want to say that like IGN and Kotaku, Jason Schreier as an example, that they're shills for these corporations. I think their primary issue with YouTubers, from what I can understand anyways, is that we don't have all the information available when we talk about games, right? When I give my opinions on Smash Bros. Ultimate, when I talk about the Switch, when I talk about third-party content coming to Switch and my thoughts and my opinions on that, the thing is these people don't like it because they have more access than we do. They've interviewed developers. They have years and years of experience talking to developers, talking to people inside. And granted, this is why the Kotakus, the IGNs, and the GameSpots are still so important, because us YouTubers, no matter how big we get, doesn't guarantee us access. I could be PewDiePie and still not be able to get an interview with a certain developer if they don't want to do interviews with me, but they're more willing to do it with an IGN or with a CNN or, with The Verge, who doesn't know how to build PCs properly. So it's just this kind of convention of traditional media versus YouTubers. And I think the disconnect, let's first off, why do you guys watch, right? I can't explain why you watch me, but as someone who consumes YouTube content, I can explain why I'm more tending to get my news and other stuff from YouTube than I am from, say, an IGN or something like that. And the reason is, one, somehow, despite being video content, we seem to get updates out on the internet faster than some of these traditional print media places do. Not always. My channel, as an example, I don't think I ever get anything out before traditional print media does. That's just the way it goes, because I get a lot of my information from those traditional print media outlets. But that's my channel. That's not true of why I watch other people's channels. Two, personality. I prefer personality in news reporting. I don't want just a pretty looking face, on a green screen, giving me the weather report. I want some personality because I want to feel like I'm connected to the place that I'm watching this content from. That when they do give that slight opinion at points, that it's an opinion that maybe I can nod my head with and agree with. Maybe I'll disagree, but maybe most of the time I do agree. And that's why I like having a personality behind the camera. In addition, I think people just in general connect more to people like me who are putting ourselves out there both from a professional and sometimes personal perspective. There are personal details about my life. Some of you guys know that, like, I'm a parent, I have children. These are things that you're not going to hear about on Kotaku or IGN. You don't get that personal, back and forth. You don't get back and forth in the comment section as much. You don't get back and forth in live streams as much as you do with YouTubers. And I think that is why people flock to YouTube in general, because they want to feel like they know the person behind the camera. Even though none of you at home truly know me as a person, you feel like you do. And that's why you flock to these channels. Versus IGN, do we really know much about Pierce Schneider? Do we, he's one of the founders of IGN. He's on the Nintendo Voice Chat podcast, and we get to see some of his personality come through. But we don't truly know Pierce Schneider. We don't truly know Jason Schreier. We don't know these personalities that are presented at these companies now because they're not doing it every day in front of a camera and giving you those raw moments where sometimes mistakes happen. We make mistakes. But it's weird when you see traditional print media like sit on their high horse and they will call out a YouTuber for any perceived or actual mistake made, both from a factual perspective or on an opinion base. And yet they're doing it from their high horse. Well, they also make mistakes. I mean, need I remind people, like the Wall Street Journal told me that, hey, we're going to get a live action Netflix show. And it turns out, yeah, maybe it was brought up in a meeting somewhere, but it was never actually in production. So, I mean, still waiting for that live action Netflix Zelda series. That isn't happening. Wall Street Journal recently told us we're going to get a Switch Pro next year. What if we don't get a Switch Pro next year? It's one of those things where they seem to brush their mistakes under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. Whereas us as YouTubers, we have to own it. There's mistakes I've made over the past or in the past and will make in the future that are going to stick with my channel for basically the entire duration this channel exists or until I die, whichever comes first. And unfortunately, those mistakes are something we have to own up to. I shouldn't really say unfortunately, maybe fortunately, there are mistakes that we do have to face, we do have to own up to. We can't just say, oh, that one writer got it wrong and fire him. Like, oh, 5J made a mistake this weekend, just fire him. It's my fault for not knowing 5J well enough to know if that kind of mistake would happen. So again, this is where there's that complete disconnect, I think, between the audience, between the content creator like me, or people in the traditional media, where traditional media, I think, has a bit of a scare factor in it. I don't think it's just about the money, because they still make plenty of money. I think there's just Jason Schreier worries about misinformation, and to be fair, most of Jason Schreier's work at Kotaku is very good. I want to be fair to him as a journalist. He does some very good investigative reporting. He does some very good writing in general. He's a good writer and a good journalist. But he has it out for content creators because we're kind of replacing what he does. And we're replacing it in a style he doesn't like. You see, he comes at us as because we have an audience, ergo, we have a responsibility to have everything we say be 100% factual and not really have our own opinions come in. Basically, what he's saying is you cannot be a talking head when you have an audience. You need to be a fact-based source of information. And I disagree with that. I think us being talking heads is why we have an audience. Like, for us to not have our opinions and our thoughts out there injected into things would mean people aren't coming to us to watch for. If people just want to get headlines, they could surf on Twitter. They could surf on Reddit. They could surf IGN's homepage. They could surf Kotaku's homepage. But that's not why people watch us. Very rarely are people watching people like me because they just want to get the news. They don't just want the news. They want our thoughts on it. They want us to give our perspective. So maybe the headline draws them in, but then they stick around because of our personality. And he doesn't like that. What Yang Ya does when he reports on his news is he gives the facts in his monotone, amazing voice of his, that sexy voice. He gives the facts, and then he gives some thoughts and his opinions on it. And that's something that Jason Schreier doesn't like. He doesn't think there's a room for thoughts and opinions. At least that's what it appears like. Now, I don't have anything against Jason Schreier. I've never talked to him. Maybe him and I could agree on a lot of things because I come from a place like he does. But I don't have a journalism degree. I've read all the code of ethics and all the stuff that journalists are supposed to adhere to, and I try to adhere to them as much as I can. But honestly, I'm not a video game journalist anymore. I'm a YouTube content creator that talks about my thoughts and my opinions on video games. As flawed as those thoughts and opinions might be, at least I'll admit that my thoughts and opinions can be flawed, including in this very video. Anyways, you guys let me know what your thought process is on traditional media versus YouTubers and why there's this rift that exists between them. Please don't just go down and post a bunch of hate comments about how crappy Kotaku is or crappy Jason Schreier is, crappy IGN. Like, I highly respect these outlets, and very often they are sources of information for our videos. So crapping on the sources we use for our videos isn't going to accomplish anything. But rather, let's have an open and honest conversation about why you watch this channel and other YouTube channels like us. Maybe you're a freaking Spawn Wave person. Maybe you're a Yang Ya guy. Maybe you watch Boogie2988. Maybe you're off doing whatever. Maybe you watch all of PewDiePie's stuff, even though he doesn't do a lot of gaming stuff anymore. Who knows? I don't know what you consume or why you consume it, but maybe you could enlighten me down in the comments below and why you might come to us over IGN or Kotaku or whatever, or why you might trust them over YouTubers and what's different between the content we make. Anyways, I'm Nathaniel Rovajans from Nintendo Prime. Be sure to enter our Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Nintendo Switch giveaway down in the comments. There's no comment for this. Down in the description with the gleam.io link. And yeah, like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. And yeah, I guess I'll just catch all of you guys in the next one. Yes.